we will talk about the 600-pound electric patient Hoyer lift or patient lifter. It does have a maximum of a 600-pound weight capacity, and it is battery operated with a remote control to make all up and down movement when lifting the patient procedures. The parts of your base of your Hoyer lift can be as described. Your grab bar or grab handle, where all grabbing and maneuver of your 600-pound electric lift should be done. You do have your boom, which extends out, connected to your cradle, 6-point cradle. You do have your hydraulic here for your patient lifting up and down. At the base, you do have the base, which does have casters on all 4 wheels. You do have your rear locks at the 2 rear wheels of your base. And once again, locks should only be used for parking or storage. Whenever lifting and transferring a patient, the wheels must be unlocked and free moving in order to center itself when the patient is being lifted for a good center of gravity. You do have your extended bar to widen or narrow the base of your lift. Narrow position would be for narrow passages and doorways, but whenever performing a lift, it's always recommended to pull the bar away from the mast of the lift, moving it over to the right, locking into position to widen your base for a better center of gravity and better lifting support. Here on this side of your lift, you do have a battery with a power cord. The power cord is connected to the charging base where your battery will be charged from. So the one side of your Hoyer lift that has the batteries directly on top of your charger is for only charging the battery if discharged. Your power plug should only be plugged in to charge the battery when the lift is not in use and when you are storing it until the next time or next lifting procedure. On the opposite side of your lift, you do have the power source for your electric 600-pound lifter. This also is battery operated with a battery pack directly on top of your power source. Your power source box does have a red emergency stop button to deactivate all power to the control box if needed. If your power button is pushed into the depressed position, that will immediately deactivate all power to your control box, stopping all function of your remote control up and down movement pendant. In order to reactivate power to your control box, simply turn your knob clockwise to the right, quarter turn to release and unlock the emergency stop. On your remote pendant is where it's plugged into your control box. It's always good to inspect your control box to make sure your motor cord is firmly plugged in, as well as your remote cord is firmly plugged in here. When maneuvering your lift to raise or lower your patient, you would have a up button here with the up arrow to raise the hydraulic and lift your patient. And then you do have a lowering button here to lower the hydraulic to lower the patient. In order to change your batteries, if your battery were to become discharged, there is a release handle located at the top rear of your battery pack. This here you would need to be grabbed and pressed, and then you would raise your battery in order to release that from your control box base or your charging base. If your battery does come discharged from use while on your control box, you will need to change batteries over from your charging side to your control box side. So we remove the one battery from the control box, move over to our charger box, squeeze the release lever located at the top rear of the battery pack, remove that battery from the charging side, and then replace the discharge battery with a fully charged battery onto the control box. You would want to make sure you slightly pull the battery to make sure it locks into position. You should hear that click. Once you hear a click, firmly give it a tug to make sure it is properly seated, contact is good, and it will not release. After you change your discharge battery to a fully charged battery, then you may take your discharge battery and place that on your charger, making sure you hear the click to lock it in place. Firmly check the contact to make sure it's firmly secured. Finish your patient lift or patient transfer. After your patient lift or transfer has been finished, then you may go ahead, place your lift away for storage. Always remember to plug in your power cord to a power outlet as such in order to properly charge the battery. When your lift is in storage, it is always recommended to keep your lift plugged and charged at all times to make sure you always have a fully charged battery in any patient lifting incident. The discharge battery may take anywhere from 8 to 12 hours to fully charge depending on discharge. If the power cord is plugged in overnight for longer than 12 hours, it is okay. The battery pack will not be damaged from overcharge. Now, the next thing we will go to is showing you the style of slings that you may be able to use other than your sling with chains with your 600-pound electric lift. When performing a lift procedure, always make sure your power cord is firmly wrapped and secured as to prevent any situations from the power cord being on the floor causing a situation where the wheel comes in contact with the power cord and it cannot roll over that. So we will secure our power cord around the grab handle in order to prevent any safety situations. The next sling we will talk about is a sling with straps. This is a 600-pound weight capacity sling. You never want to exceed the weight capacity of the sling when performing a patient lift, and never exceed the weight capacity of the lift when lifting the patient. You do have the side here with the tags, which would be the side that would be up behind the patient's shoulders, tags always away from the patient's skin. You do have color-coded straps here as to allow you for different lengths and different size patients to be able to adjust and hang your straps onto your cradle. You have a blue, green, purple, and black strap. As well as on the bottom section, you also have your blue, green, purple, and black straps. All four corners of your sling do have the same style mounting strap system, color-coded to make sure that you are properly hanging the proper hook and proper color-coded hook on each side of the cradle when connecting the cradle to your sling. This next sling here, as well, is also a 600-pound sling with straps. This, however, does have your commode opening for those patients that need the commode opening to be placed onto a commode or for cleaning and dressing changes. Another style of sling here, and this would be an extra large sling for a 600-pound patient, would be what we could call your divided leg sling or U-padded style sling. Your divided leg sling or U-padded style sling will be used in order to divide the patient's leg and hang the patient. You do have two straps towards the shoulder section, where this section here is behind the patient's back and shoulders. And then you do have a 3-strap section for your thigh straps, which go around and underneath the patient's thigh. We will show you how to apply the sling to the patient before connecting to the sling when the patient is in a resting or seated position. You will use the same style of method in order to apply your sling to a patient if they're laying in bed. You would have to use a tuck and roll method where you will first fold your sling in half, and then you would take that half and fold that half in half again. Once you do have your two halves, you will notify the patient that you would be applying the sling to the patient and putting them underneath them where they would need to roll from one side. First, you lay the sling across the length of the patient's body along their side. You will have the half with the one part of the half from your thigh section here and your head section. When the patient rolls over, you will go ahead and tuck the half with the other half underneath the patient as such. Tag side always up towards the patient's shoulder area, away from the patient's skin. Other side underneath the patient's thighs. When the patient has been rolled over to the next side, you will then be able to gain access to the other side of your sling, pulling out the other half underneath the patient, so that your sling is fully underneath the patient as such. You will have one color-coded strap on each corner of the sling for you to connect your sling strap to your cradle of your lifter. Now that the sling has been applied to the patient, you will then raise your bed to its highest point so that you do not have to raise your 600-pound electrical lift higher than needed in order to lift and transfer the patient from the surface of the mattress. The bed frame has been raised. You will then grab your Hoyer lift from your grab bar only, where all maneuvers are made. Slowly ease the lift towards the patient, making sure your cradle is clear of the patient's body mass. If it is not cleared, you may use a remote pendant to raise the cradle higher in order to clear the patient's body. Once the cradle has been adjusted to a good height, then use your grab handle to maneuver your 600-pound lift over the patient with the base going underneath the bed. You will need to turn your cradle sideways if it's in the wrong direction, and then use your remote pendant to lower your cradle to a position where you can attach your sling with straps. In the first video, we shown that in order to use a sling with chains, the chain should always be mounted in the center position or center part of your cradle. When you're using a sling with strap style, then you will need to use the four corners of your cradle. So with this scenario, you will see we will be attaching our strap, one to each corner of the cradle. Your straps have been color coded so that you can clearly see that you are hanging both sides of the sling on the proper color coded strap and that it is even when raising the patient. You also do want to use the similar philosophy when using this sling with chains. With the sling with chains, we hang it on the 9th link, where the shorter side of the chain should be towards the patient's shoulders, longer side of the chain should be towards the patient's thighs. When using a sling with straps, you want to use the shortest strap possible towards the patient's shoulders. That would be allowed. So on this scenario, we'll use the blue one, which is the shortest, and connect that to one corner of your cradle. On the other side of the shoulder, you will have your color-coded strap. We will also use the shorter strap that we are able to use, in this case the blue one, and hang that one onto the opposite corner of your cradle from your shoulder section. Moving along down the side of the patient's body to the strap by the patient's thighs, you will then use your purple or your black so that you have a longer strap that is placed on the thigh section and a shorter strap that is placed on the shoulder section. So we'll hang this one on the purple so that this strap will be longer than the strap that's on the head section. We will finish across corner, also maintaining the same strap system, purple strap, to the other fourth corner. Once all straps have been placed onto your cradle and they have been checked for secured, make sure that all straps are the same color coded. Same color should be on the shoulder sides, same color should be on the thigh or leg side. When your strap system has been connected to the cradle and you're ready to perform your lift, you may then lower your bed as to start to position the patient for lifting. Remembering to always keep an eye on how low you lower your bed, as to not lower it onto the base here of your patient lifter. Once your bed frame has been lowered, if the patient's mask has not been cleared off the surface, you may then use your remote pendant to finish the lifting procedure, using your raise button to raise the patient lift the rest of the way. Once the patient has been cleared off the surface, you may then hang your pendant on your grab bar. Hold onto your grab bar as to maneuver your patient lifter away from the bed frame, pulling backwards. Once the patient has started to clear the mattress, you would want to turn the patient so that the patient's head is in this area here, away from your boom and away from the cradle. And the patient's legs should be in this area here. So once the patient has been positioned and you maneuver your lift towards your item, remembering always to bring your wheelchair, commode, or jerry chair or rotor chair to where the patient's lift is, rather than transporting your lift over too long of a distance to where the item is. Never transport the lift longer than needed. Do not transport the lift over deep pile carpeting, rough roof surfaces, uneven surfaces, or gravel roads. If the patient were to be suspended in the air for longer than needed so you can grab your item, it is always suggested to lower the hydraulic to center the patient's gravity, where the patient's feet will be resting here at the base of your lift. If during any course of action when lifting a patient with your 600-pound electric lift, if you go to lift your patient and your remote pendant stops functioning, always first check your battery pack in order to make sure your battery has not discharged. If it is discharged, switch the batteries from your charger over to the other side in order to make sure you maintain a fully charged battery and you can finish your lifting procedure. However, there is a safety mechanism or emergency release for your patient. If you come into a situation where the patient lifter was not charged during the course of the time it was being stored, and your battery that you're currently using to power your control box is also discharged, so both batteries have been discharged, and now your patient is in the air, you would need to get the patient down sooner than needed rather than have them hanging in the air until the battery is charged. So, if you look at the base of your hydraulic here, you do have a key ring here connected to your emergency release valve. With patient's weight, if you were to pull upward on this emergency release valve with the patient's weight, your Hoyer lift will slowly go down to lower the patient onto an item or back onto the mattress, so that you can then charge your battery and then proceed with the next patient lift if needed with a fully charged battery. When using your U-padded or divided leg sling, in order to prepare and place this underneath the patient for a patient lift and transfer, it is best to first fold your sling with the leg upwards. Okay? And what you do to one side, you as well fold and do to the other side. Okay? At that time, you will fold that backwards, both halves towards the back half of the sling, and then fold the sling in half as such. Okay? So that should be how your sling should be folded when getting prepared to apply your sling to the patient while they're in a bed or chair. At this time, you will take your padded sling here, fold it, and notify the patient that you will need to roll the patient over in order to get the sling underneath them. When the patient rolls to one side, you will take your half here and tuck that underneath the patient. After you tuck the one side of the patient, you may take this side of your leg, divided leg sling, swing that out towards the side and down along the patient's side of the body. After you prepare the one side, you may then have the patient roll to the other side. Take your divided leg sling, take the leg side, slide that sideways out towards the side and downward along the side of the patient's body. Once you have the patient prepared on your sling, the patient's back area should be resting in this section of your sling, here. You do have two straps to raise the patient's height when lifting the patient for a transfer, shorter strap and longer strap. And then you do have 3 strap lengths on your side or leg side. When performing a lift, this is a U-pattern, divided leg style sling. It will wrap from the outside of the patient's thigh, underneath the thigh, towards the inside of the thigh, as like that. The opposite side will as well wrap from the outside of the patient's thigh, underneath the thigh, towards the inside. When connecting your sling to your cradle, your strap should be crossed as such, opposite sides connecting to your cradle. So after we position our patient and get the sling underneath them, you will then follow as instructed to raise your bed to assist with easier lifting of the patient for added safety. Once our bed frame has been raised, we will use our grab handle to maneuver our lift. Make sure our cradle is cleared over the patient's center mass, or body mass. Slowly maneuver the lift over the patient. After the cradle has been turned, turn the cradle sideways as to prepare for the proper alignment. Once you have positioned the cradle over the patient's center mass, you can then use your remote pendant to lower the cradle to a position where it would allow you to connect your straps from your sling to your cradle. Once again, since this is a sling style with straps, you would only use the 4 quarters of your cradle system. Shorter side strap, if applicable, should be towards the head section or the shoulder section. So you want to make sure as to hang them both on the same strap, not to have one on a longer one on a shorter one. We said the divided leg sling should go around from the outside of the thigh towards the inside of the thigh and then cross. When you cross them, you would hang the opposite side to the opposite corner, and then the same on the other side, hang the opposite side to the opposite corner. Once all your straps have been connected to your cradle, do a double check to make sure they are firmly connected. Every strap is connected on the same length. You may then lower your bed frame as to proceed with the rest of your lifting procedures. Lower the bed. Watch the clearance as to not lower the bed onto the base of your Hoyer lift. Once your bed frame has been lowered, if the patient has still not been cleared off the surface of the mattress, you may then use your remote pendant to then increase the height of your hydraulic to raise the patient the rest of the way, lifting them off the surface of the mattress. Once the patient has been lifted and clears the surface, you may hang your remote pendant, use your grab bar to maneuver your lift and slowly ease away from the bed surface. Once the patient has been cleared over the surface, immediately position the patient where the patient's head is away from your boom and away from your cradle. The patient's leg should be in this area here. Remember not to transport over deep pile carpeting, rough roof surfaces. Bring the item to where the patient lift is. Do not move the lift to where the item is. If the patient needs to be suspended for a shorter period of time, lower the lift with your remote pendant in order to center the patient's weight, and the patient's legs or feet should be hanging on the base area here.